Hey guys, back again with another video, a review on I Am Setsuna for the PS4 and PC. Another JRPG. This is the third JRPG I've played in a row, and after this I'm definitely going to be playing something a little different. And this game, it's been getting decent reviews. I was looking forward to it. I always thought it looked pretty interesting, and I'm a huge fan of the classic JRPGs, PS1, Super Nintendo era RPGs, which were a huge influence on this game. And this was developed by Tokyo RPG Factory within Square Enix, like a new studio they created to make kind of like classic JRPGs. And Chrono Trigger was the big inspiration for this game, so obviously I was excited for this. Chrono Trigger is one of my favorite games of all time. I think that game's a masterpiece. Unfortunately, I'm not that big on this game. I think it's got a lot of issues. It's not the worst game ever. It's not as mediocre as Star Ocean, but at $40, it's really hard to recommend. And even on sale for like $20, I don't know. I would still find it hard to recommend. There's so many things that bothered me about this game, and I don't think it does anything particularly well. Let's start with the story. Basically, your main character, Endir, kind of meets this in the very beginning, you meet this kind of shady type character that tells you to kill this person, Setsuna. And eventually you end up finding her. You're like a mercenary. You end up finding her, and it turns out she has to go on this pilgrimage, and she's a sacrifice. And this happens every 10 or so years to kind of put the monsters at bay temporarily. And the main theme of the game is sadness, so obviously that ties in with the plot quite a bit. And you're basically on this pilgrimage, and you're kind of meeting new characters along the way. It reminds me of Final Fantasy X in a lot of ways, and obviously if you've played Final Fantasy X, you'll recognize that the plot is pretty similar. Now, it's nowhere near as complex in Final Fantasy X. It doesn't tackle as many themes. And the characters here, you don't get a whole lot of development for them. Each character has their own kind of like secret that you'll eventually find out towards the end of the game. But because the game is so short and the story, there's just not much to the story, you don't really get a whole lot of development for these characters. And that's a bit unfortunate. But at the same time, the characters aren't bad. In fact, I didn't dislike a single one of them. I think they're all fairly solid characters, but at the same time, none of them are particularly exciting. My favorite character is probably, I don't know, either Nadir or Eterna, I guess. The Setsuna is actually kind of a character we've seen a lot. They really kind of selfless character that just wants to help everybody. She's not, I don't know, she's not fantastic, but the main story, you know what? I was invested enough in it. I've always kind of liked these pilgrimage kind of storylines, and I think the world that they've created here is pretty interesting. There's a lot of lore that you can look up in like the Snow Chronicles part of like the main menu, and I really think this game does well with the theme of sadness. You really do feel like the game has a kind of depressing, sad feel from start to finish. There's not a lot of humor to this game, and I think I actually enjoyed that quite a bit. But at the same time, the ending, I think, has a few fumbles. I don't think the ending is particularly strong, and overall the story is just, I would say I guess it's well done for how simple it is, but at the same time, it's not amazing. It's not an amazing story or anything, and at times it can be a little boring as well. But I still think it's probably one of the better parts of the games, or the game rather. But now, I guess we'll move into the gameplay, which is where most of my issues lie. And basically, the battle system is Chrono Trigger. It's Chrono Trigger's battle system. It's got the ATB system where you're waiting till the ATB bar is filled up, and then you can make your move. Each character's got MP. You've got techs. Each character has techs pulled straight from Chrono Trigger. And there's dual techs and combos where, like, 3 characters, if you have certain abilities set up on your characters, you can have a group of 3 characters pull off like a really strong combo. And then there's a few different things added to it where it differs from Chrono Trigger. You have a momentum mode where basically you have an SP bar that fills, and it can get up to like 3 levels. And once you've got the SP bar filled and you attack, if you press the square button when your character flashes, you'll you'll get off some like extra damage, or you'll have like a bonus effect. For instance, one of the heals on Setsuna, if you press square at the right time, it will basically add a status effect on each of your characters. For instance, one spell she gets later in the game that's really powerful allows you to heal the entire party as well. If you use the momentum mode, you can basically add an auto-revive effect to your characters for a limited time, so if they die, they'll immediately revive, which is pretty cool. So this momentum mode is the one mechanic in this game that I enjoy, other than the combat system just being solid on its own, even though it's not ambitious or anything like that, because it is Chrono Trigger's battle system. Now, but there are mechanics in this game that drive me nuts, and I'll talk about them now. First off is the Sprite Knight system, and Sprite Knight are your different abilities that you equip on your characters. Each character have a few different abilities that are different from one character, but you can actually have healing abilities on any character you want through the Sprite Knight system. And to get these abilities, you have to actually gather materials out in the world, from like these shiny spots on the map, or from the monsters that you kill. And basically, you have to bring these materials back to a merchant in town, and you have to sell these materials. And once you've sold the materials, you can buy the different Sprite Knight. And this is extremely irritating, because if you want a certain skill, you have to have the right materials, and the game doesn't tell you which monster drops these materials. And it's really frustrating. There was a lot of late game abilities that I really wanted to get, but I had no idea how to get them, because you needed a certain material. And even looking at the internet, it looks like there's basically there aren't any material guides out there to help you get the skills that you want. And not only that, if you know the specific monster you have to kill it in a very specific way. You might have to get a momentum kill, or a flux kill, or a limit kill, or all these different types of kills, and it's really obtuse. It's not a fun system at all. I really do not know why they went with this system. I much would have preferred Sprite Knight. Your characters just learn Sprite Knight on leveling up. And that brings me to the leveling up system, which I also don't like in this game, where when you level up, your characters only get MP and HP. Their actual stats don't increase. The way to increase your stats is the weapons you equip, and you have to buy these from a merchant, and you can kind of upgrade them with materials, and some of the weapons will give you different effects. But honestly, I hated that. I really hated how your stats were tied to weapons in this game. It made it so that leveling up felt pointless, and it wasn't exciting at all. And it actually makes it so that grinding is not really that much of a help, unless you want like an absurd amount of HP, which actually you need for a lot of the optional bosses later. But yeah, the leveling up I really did not care for. There's also a few other mechanics I really don't like in this game. Another mechanic is the singularity mechanic, where randomly during battle you'll get a bonus effect. For instance, all your characters might have their resistances, like their elemental resistances, increased by 100 for a limited time. And these singularity effects just randomly happen. There's no way to guarantee that you'll get one of these effects. And honestly, I've hated RNG type systems like that, and it's really frustrating to see that in this game. And then there's also the flux system, which is a very obtuse system that the game does not explain to you well. In fact, the game doesn't explain to you a lot of things very, very well, really. And this flux system is such a weird mechanic, where you've got like these talismans that you can equip on your characters, and they give you different abilities. Which I'm not a fan of. I'm not a fan of this talisman system either. It's just kind of annoying having to keep switching your talismans between different characters to equip different Sprite Knight. Because you have different Sprite Knight. You have like support Sprite Knight, attack Sprite Knight, command Sprite Knight, things like that. But this flux system, basically, like some of these talismans will give you a better flux bonus. But basically, it's actually hard to describe, because I've beaten this game and I'm still not sure how you activate these fluxes. From what I can tell, it's completely random, where you can get different effects added to your techs if you keep using them frequently, depending on the talisman you've got equipped. Because each talisman will give a different flux bonus. So if your talisman gives like an attack flux bonus, and you keep using your shock ability, eventually, sometimes after a battle, you'll get like an attack bonus added to that ability. based on that talisman you've got equipped. It's this really obtuse, frustrating system that's completely random, and I actually felt like it was pretty necessary in a lot of ways, because the abilities you get in this game are very weak. Most of them feel very useless as well. Too many of them attack all targets, which is very frustrating and doesn't help very much against the bosses. And yeah, this flux system I just did not enjoy. And yeah, mainly with the gameplay here, the mechanics. I did not like the mechanics in this game. I just don't think they work well together, and they almost ruin an otherwise solid battle system. It was very unfortunate. Now, the difficulty is weird in this game too, where like the standard mobs of enemies are extremely easy. Like you can get through them no problem, especially when you get like the blow beat ability, where you can just basically wipe out every enemy on screen in one move, especially if you get like an advantage attack where you run up behind an enemy, which yes, you can see the enemies on the map. You'll get like all your SP gauges filled, and then you can use the blow beat ability and add like an attack buff to that, and you'll kill every enemy on the screen. But the bosses, especially in the second half of the game, are actually really challenging. Like I've seen a lot of people say that this game is too easy. I disagree with that. I actually don't think this game's easy at all. Like it's not the hardest game ever, but the bosses were really tough for me, especially some of the later ones. Because again, a lot of these moves I found are way better for multiple enemies at once, and a lot of these bosses you're just fighting them one-on-one, and they have like inflated HP, like they have way too much health, and they do a lot of damage. But the bosses are where the battle system I think shines the most. It's where the battle system really gets kind of complex and tactical, and you know, waiting for all your gauges to fill up. You can also, like with Chrono Trigger, you can have wait or battle mode, where you basically, if you put on wait mode, you can kind of take your time picking your different commands. But yeah, enemies you see on the map, unfortunately, this is actually not that helpful, because the way this game is designed, it's very hard to avoid enemy encounters. Most of the time, you're going to have to fight the enemies. Like, yes, you can see them on screen, but it's way too hard to dodge them. The dungeons in this game I think are pretty annoying, mainly because of the save points. There's hardly any save points in this game. Like I said, Star Ocean was stingy with its save points. This game is worse. There's maybe a dungeon at the beginning and end of every dungeon, and then on the world map. That's it. And these dungeons are long. Like some of the later ones take like an hour to complete, and you're going up all these floors fighting mostly unskippable enemies. And there's all these like these chests that you can't open until later in the game, and to backtrack to get all these chests, oh my god, I can't believe how anyone could do that. Because you have to backtrack through all these dungeons with all these weak enemies that you have to fight, unless you buy a ton of items to run away from the battle. So I didn't feel like it was worth my time to do a lot of the optional content in this game. It's mostly those chests. There's a ton of optional bosses, like stronger version of the bosses that you've already fought, which that's pretty lame. From what I understand, they only really get you some like materials to get some of like the stronger Sprite Knights, which again, that's kind of annoying to me. There's some like optional super bosses that you can find if you want like a really good challenge. The only optional thing I really liked was like this. I don't really actually want to spoil it, but it's basically a forest that you'll find, like a hidden forest. And I don't want to spoil it, but it's really neat. I liked it quite a bit. But yeah, gameplay wise, I gotta say I liked it at first, but the more I played it, the less I liked its mechanics. And I don't know, I thought it was just a very frustrating game to play at times. The dungeons themselves are just basically a bunch of corridors with very light puzzle solving. In fact, the only real puzzle in this game are like these floors that you can kind of manipulate by pressing switches and kind of like change the direction of them. And they use this puzzle way too often late in the game, which was kind of frustrating. But yeah, gameplay wise, I gotta say it didn't do it for me. I really, for the most part, I didn't really enjoy playing this game, despite the fairly solid battle system. I guess some other things to mention. The game is fairly linear. Like I said before, there is some optional content you can do like right at the end of the game, like before the point of no return. You've got your world map, you've got your classic world map. You do get the airship. Unfortunately, you don't actually get a map. There's no map in like the top right part of the screen, so it's hard to tell actually where you're going. If you need to get to a specific town, it can be kind of annoying. So you kind of have to memorize the map in that way. Um, but yeah, there's not a whole lot to the game. Like I said before, it's a very short game. It took me, I want to say, like no more than 25 hours, which is actually on the longer side. I think most people probably takes like around 18, but I did a decent amount of the optional content, and a lot of the bosses, for whatever reason, actually I got a few game overs on them. I don't know. Maybe I just sucked at the game. Maybe I wasn't equipping the right Sprite Knight on my characters. I didn't have the right combos or whatever. But the difficulties, I think it's kind of erratic, where it's like the normal enemies are too easy, but the bosses are actually like really difficult. Unfortunately, though, like I actually wouldn't want the normal enemies to be really challenging. It'd be annoying because you have to go through these hour-long dungeons without save points. If you were to go through an hour-long dungeon with all these really difficult enemies and you die like 45 minutes through it and get game over, and you have to do that all over again, like, I don't know, man. Like, that would be extremely frustrating. So at the same time, I actually don't mind actually that the enemies are so weak in this game. I'm trying to think of what else for gameplay. I mean, that's about it. There's not much to it. It obviously it takes a lot of inspiration from classic JRPGs. It tries a few new things compared to something like Chrono Trigger, but I just don't think the mechanics that they've got in this game work. It's I appreciate the fact that they tried to be different, and it's just not a complete rip-off of Chrono Trigger. But yeah, I did not enjoy this game's mechanics, sadly. Moving on to the visuals, I like the look of this game. It was made with the Unity engine. It's all 3D models and 3D environments. You can tell the game didn't have a massive budget. It doesn't look amazing. The animations I found aren't that great. The character models, some of the character models I'm not crazy about. Some of the environments are a little, I don't know. They don't. Some of the environments don't look like amazing, like some of like the trees and houses and things. But I think the game's got like a distinct art style to it. And again, I like the snowy world that they've got. The entire game takes place in snowy environments, ice caves, snowy fields and things like that. And some people might be disappointed by that. Some people might want like a grand adventure, like a lot of RPGs, where you've got your volcano area, your forest area, your snow area. Things like that. But I actually liked the world in this game. It kind of added to the kind of depressing nature of the game. It really felt desolate, this game's world. You've got like these little tiny villages. There's no inns in this game. There's barely any people walking around these villages. Everyone's kind of like depressed. It's I don't know. I kind of liked it. I liked the kind of snowy world this game had. It was different. And I think it really did add to the game's atmosphere and a sense of, sense of sadness, basically. So yeah, visually, it's got a nice like art direction to it. But some of the environments look a little bland, like a lot of like the caves and the dungeons and things like that. Yeah, the visuals are fine, I think. Now the audio, on the other hand, is incredible. There's no voice acting. You just got to read a bunch of text. There's like a little, there's some voice clips from characters, but it's all in Japanese. But the soundtrack in this game is incredible. This is easily the best part of the game, and I heard the soundtrack before the game came out, and I knew I was going to love it. It's completely piano-driven. These kind of piano-driven melodies that play throughout the game, whether it be the battle theme or the dungeon themes or the town themes or the world map themes. You've got some more like you've got like your softer songs, like your more sadder sounding songs that you hear like in the towns. But then the battle theme, for instance, is pretty upbeat, but still using pianos. And some people, I think, aren't going to like this, the fact that the soundtrack is completely piano. But I loved it. I thought it really added to the atmosphere of the game, and all of the music in this game is so like beautiful. Like it sounds incredible. Like I really love the soundtrack in this game. It's probably one of the best soundtracks I've heard in a game in a long time. I think there was only like one song in the game that I was kind of like It was like only okay. It was like kind of like the trouble song, the song that plays when something troubling happens. But other than that, like the music in this game is incredible. It's worth seeking out. Like as far as like an official soundtrack or whatever, I think you can buy one on Steam. I played this on PS4 though. But yeah, in terms of like audio visual presentation, I think this game is pretty great, and it really the game's got this atmosphere to it that I really appreciated. But yeah, I mean, I think that about covers it for I Am Setsuna. When I look at it overall, it's a decent game. I didn't like its mechanics, but overall, the battle system was fun enough. The story wasn't amazing or anything. In fact, actually, now thinking about it, the main character in this game, I think, is actually kind of weak. I don't know, but I can't really go into too many details with that because I don't really want to spoil the story. But yeah, like overall, it doesn't. There's nothing about it other than the soundtrack that really blew me away. It did remind me of like the good old days, those 16-bit RPGs and RPGs on the PS1. But I don't think it holds a candle to those games. I just think it's lacking in too many aspects for me, sadly. So yeah, maybe at like $10 to $20 on sale, maybe I would recommend it. But at the same time, if you're like me, you've probably missed out on a lot of RPGs, even RPGs that this game was inspired by. A big one for me is Valkyrie Profile on the PS1. I've never played that, and that's supposed to be like one of the best JRPGs of all time. So, I struggle to really recommend this when you could probably be playing much better JRPGs. Again, like Tokyo Mirage Sessions, like I played not too long ago. Like that's a great game that's worth your time. This, I'm not so sure. I don't know. It's only okay. It's an okay like decent game. But yeah, I mean that about covers it. I want to thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.